The most dangerous retirement mistake is not running out of money when you are old. It is building a life that quietly guarantees that outcome while you still feel like you have plenty of time. That is what makes this so dangerous. Retirement does not get destroyed in one dramatic moment. It gets weakened by normal decisions, repeated for years, defended by excuses, and hidden inside lifestyles that look completely reasonable from the outside. And by the time most people realize what those decisions were really costing them, the clock is no longer on their side. Because here is the part almost nobody wants to face. A lot of people are not heading toward retirement. They're drifting toward dependence. They're drifting toward a future where work is not optional, where stress lasts longer than their energy does, and where freedom arrives much later than they thought, if it arrives at all. And the reason is not always low income. Often, it is something more frustrating than that. It is a set of financial mistakes that feel harmless in the moment and devastating in hindsight. Retirement failure rarely looks reckless while it's happening. It often looks normal. It looks like keeping up. It looks like rewarding yourself. It looks like delaying one decision until next year. It looks like assuming you will earn more later. It looks like believing you can always catch up. That is why this matters. Because if you can spot these 10 mistakes clearly enough, you do not just protect your retirement. You protect your future peace, your future choices, and your future dignity. My name is Matthew, and I spend way too much time thinking about retirement planning, money psychology, and the quiet financial patterns that decide whether people end up secure, stressed, or stuck much later in life. And if you stay with me all the way through this, you're going to notice something important. These 10 mistakes are not just about numbers. They're about mindset, behavior, and the stories people tell themselves while the years move faster than expected. In other words, this is not just about what people do wrong with money. It is about why they keep doing it, even when they know better. And the last mistake on this list may be the one that ruins more retirements than all the others combined, because it sits underneath almost everything else. The first mistake that ruins retirement is waiting too long to start investing because you think small amounts are not worth it. This is one of the most common and most expensive lies people tell themselves. They imagine investing only matters once they can put in a large amount. So they wait. They say they will start when they get a raise. They will start after the debt is lower. They will start when life feels less chaotic. They will start when they can finally do it properly. But what they are really doing is letting perfection delay participation. And that delay is brutal because time is one of the few advantages ordinary people actually have in building retirement wealth. You do not need to be brilliant to benefit from compounding. You do not need perfect timing. You do not need huge income right away. But you do need time. The earlier years matter disproportionately because they give your money longer to grow. So when people postpone investing for years waiting to do it right, they are not being careful. They are quietly increasing the amount of future sacrifice required to reach the same destination. This is where many people get confused. They think the problem is not investing enough. Often, the deeper problem is not starting at all. Because once someone begins, even with a modest amount, they build a habit, a system, and a financial identity. Waiting keeps retirement in the category of future me will handle it. Starting moves it into the category of this is part of my real life now. That psychological shift matters more than most people realize. The second mistake is treating retirement saving like an optional leftover instead of a fixed priority. This is one of the clearest ways people sabotage themselves while feeling responsible. They pay their bills, cover their lifestyle, handle random expenses, and then tell themselves that whatever remains can go toward the future. The problem is that for many people, something always absorbs the remainder. There's always a trip, an upgrade, a repair, a celebration, a convenience habit, a seasonal expense, a higher grocery bill, a more expensive lease, or a reason this month feels different. That means retirement saving becomes permanently conditional. It happens only when life is calm enough, cheap enough, and cooperative enough to allow it. But life is rarely that cooperative for long. So years pass with inconsistent contributions, and people wonder why their balances still feel small. The answer is painful but simple. They have been asking the future to survive on leftovers. People who retire, well, usually reverse that order. They do not save what is left after life. They build life around what gets saved first. That does not mean they live miserably. It means they understand a principle that changes everything. If retirement is funded only when it feels convenient, it will never be funded enough. Security requires priority, not preference. Before we go further, write this in the comments. One retirement habit I'm improving now. Keep it short and real. It could be invest every month, stop lifestyle inflation, pay off high-interest debt, or track my spending. Writing it down makes the intention more concrete. It moves the goal from a vague idea into a clearer commitment, and that small act can increase the odds that you actually follow through. A lot of financial change begins the moment you stop thinking in generalities and start naming the behavior you want to change. The third mistake is carrying high-interest debt for too long while telling yourself you will deal with it later. This is a retirement killer because it does not just cost interest. It steals capacity. It eats the very cash flow that could have gone toward investing, and it often stays around longer than people expected because it gets normalized. Credit card balances, personal loans, buy now, pay later plans, debt from lifestyle choices that have long since stopped providing any joy. It all creates drag. The real danger here is psychological. Once debt becomes routine, people stop experiencing it as an emergency and start experiencing it as background. It becomes just another monthly obligation. And when that happens, urgency disappears. People adapt to the pressure instead of removing it. They structure their lives around minimum payments, adjust their expectations downward, and tell themselves that as long as they are managing it, it is not a serious problem. But debt that drains your future investing power is not harmless just because it has become familiar. And here is the hidden cost. Debt does not only reduce the money you can invest, it also changes how you feel about money. It makes you more fragile, more reactive, and more likely to need your next paycheck. It reduces margin. It increases stress. It makes setbacks more dangerous. That emotional burden often leads to even weaker decisions, which means the debt problem can quietly feed on itself for years. The fourth mistake is lifestyle inflation. This one is subtle enough to fool almost everyone. Income rises and almost immediately spending rises too. Better apartment, better neighborhood, better car, better restaurants, better vacations, better furniture, better everything. None of these upgrades feels outrageous by itself. In fact, they often feel deserved. But when every increase in income gets translated into a more expensive version of normal life, retirement progress slows down or disappears completely. Lifestyle inflation is especially dangerous because it disguises itself as progress. People think they're moving forward because their lives look nicer. But nicer looking life is not the same as a more secure life. If your income doubles and your savings rate barely changes, you may be earning more while still building a fragile future. This is one of the strangest financial traps in modern life. People become more successful and yet remain almost equally dependent on continued income. That is why some high earners reach their 40s or 50s and suddenly feel an unexpected kind of panic. On paper, they have done well. In reality, they have built a lifestyle that consumes nearly everything it touches. Their retirement accounts are lighter than they should be. Their obligations are heavier than they expected, and the gap between appearance and security starts becoming impossible to ignore. The fifth mistake is underestimating how much retirement will actually cost. This happens in two ways. Some people assume their expenses will collapse once they stop working. Others use vague guesses instead of real numbers. They imagine retirement as a cheaper version of the present without fully considering healthcare, inflation, housing, travel goals, family support, or the possibility that they may simply want more flexibility and comfort, not less. The problem with guessing low is that it creates false confidence. People feel better than they should because the target they are aiming at is unrealistically easy. Then later, when they start calculating more honestly, they realize they are farther behind than they thought. That realization can be painful, but it is better than staying inside a fantasy. A strong retirement plan is not built on optimism alone. It is built on math that respects reality. You do not need perfect projections because life will always shift, but you do need honest estimates. Otherwise, you risk spending years preparing for a retirement that exists only on paper. The sixth mistake is ignoring inflation. This sounds basic, but the consequences are huge. Many people think in static dollars. They imagine a future amount and assume it will feel as powerful later as it does now. But money changes. Prices change. The cost of staying alive changes. The same number that feels large today may feel surprisingly ordinary 20 or 30 years from now. This mistake is dangerous because it makes people complacent. They hit a number in their head and assume they are safer than they really are. Or they build a savings plan that would have worked in an older cost environment but does not reflect the world they are actually moving into. Retirement planning requires more than just accumulating money. It requires understanding purchasing power. A retirement balance is only meaningful in relation to what that money can still do for you later. And inflation does more than reduce value. It punishes delay. The longer someone waits to get serious, the more they have to overcome not only lost compounding, but rising future costs. That double pressure is what catches so many people off guard. The seventh mistake is relying too heavily on one source of future retirement security. Some people assume Social Security will be enough. Others assume the house will solve everything. Others assume they will inherit money, sell a business, or simply keep working longer than planned. The issue is not that any one of these things is useless. The issue is dependence. If your retirement plan is built around one pillar, then any weakness in that pillar becomes a major threat. Highly resilient retirement planning usually comes from layering. Savings, investments, manageable expenses, realistic timelines, multiple buffers, and a lifestyle that does not require constant financial perfection. When people rely too heavily on a single source, they're often really relying on hope. And hope is not a strategy. It is not that hopeful things never happen. It is that basing your future on things you do not fully control is a dangerous way to build peace of mind. This is also where a lot of people get emotionally trapped. They do not want to confront the weakness of the plan they already have, so they keep defending it mentally. The house will go up. I'll work a few extra years. Things usually work out. Maybe, but maybe not. The future tends to punish vague assumptions far more harshly than the present does. If this video is helping you see retirement more clearly, subscribe here. That small action helps the channel keep making practical finance content like this, and it helps more people discover ideas that can genuinely improve their financial lives. A lot of people are working hard and still not seeing the risks clearly enough, and one sharp conversation at the right time can save years of avoidable stress. The eighth mistake is not preparing emotionally for retirement, only financially. This one surprises people, but it matters more than most assume. Retirement is not just a money event. It is an identity event, a routine event, a purpose event, a lifestyle event. Many people think only about the number and never think about what their days will actually feel like, what they will move toward, what will replace the structure of work, or how their relationships may change. Why does that matter financially? Because when people retire without psychological preparation, they can drift into expensive behaviors. Some overspend out of boredom. Some support adult children more than they can afford because it gives them a sense of relevance. Some jump into travel or hobbies without boundaries because they're trying to create meaning quickly. Some go back to work not because they want to, but because the transition feels emptier or more disorienting than expected. A strong retirement is not just funded. It is imagined honestly. It includes purpose, routine, identity, and emotional stability. Without that, even a decent nest egg can come under more pressure than expected. The ninth mistake is refusing to adjust when the numbers clearly say something needs to change. This is where pride becomes expensive. Some people know they are behind. They know the savings rate is too low, the debt is too high, the spending is too loose, or the retirement plan is too vague. But they do not change because change threatens the version of life they have gotten comfortable defending. This is one of the darkest financial patterns because it is not ignorance. It is avoidance. It is the decision to protect the present self-image at the expense of the future self. People keep the expensive house, the unnecessary car payment, the recurring luxury habits, the overextended lifestyle because cutting back feels emotionally painful. It feels like shrinking. It feels like failure. So they wait, and time keeps moving. The longer someone delays necessary adjustments, the harsher those adjustments usually become later. A modest correction in your 30s can feel manageable. A forced correction in your late 50s can feel terrifying. That is why flexibility is such a powerful retirement skill. People who retire well are often not the people who never made mistakes. They're the people who were willing to face reality early enough to correct them. And now we arrive at the 10th mistake, the one that sits underneath so many others. It is buying the fantasy that you can always catch up later. This is the mistake that quietly feeds procrastination, overspending, delay, underinvesting, loose planning, and financial denial. It sounds harmless. It sounds hopeful. It sounds like something people say to calm themselves. But over time, it becomes one of the most destructive beliefs in personal finance. I'll get serious next year. I'll invest more when I earn more. I'll clean this up once the kids are older. I'll fix retirement after I pay for this stage of life. I still have time. That last one is the most dangerous of all, because usually it feels true right up until it does not. Later is expensive. Later has less room for error. Later has fewer compounding years left. Later often arrives with more obligations, not fewer. More family complexity, more health uncertainty, more career risk, more emotional resistance to change. People imagine later as a cleaner version of now, when in reality later is often just now with higher stakes. And this is the deeper revelation that ties everything together. Retirement does not usually get ruined because people hate the idea of security. It gets ruined because people consistently choose present comfort over future strength in ways that feel too small to matter. They protect today's lifestyle, today's image, today's emotions, and today's convenience. Meanwhile, retirement gets whatever is left over. Leftover money, leftover focus, leftover urgency, leftover honesty. And a future built on leftovers rarely feels safe. That is the hardest truth in this whole conversation. Many people do not have a retirement plan. They have a retirement wish, a retirement assumption, a retirement vibe. They assume some combination of time, income, home equity, or luck will carry them across the finish line. But the finish line does not care how responsible someone felt while avoiding the deeper math. It responds to what was actually built. The good news is that once you see these mistakes clearly, you can do something about them. Retirement damage is not always reversible, but it is often interruptible. That matters. You do not need perfection from this point forward. You need honesty, priority, and repetition. You need to start where you are and stop pretending that later will automatically be stronger than now. Sometimes the most powerful retirement move is not complicated at all. It is simply deciding that the future version of you deserves more than leftovers. That might mean finally automating contributions instead of waiting for motivation. It might mean cutting one recurring expense that no longer serves you and redirecting it into retirement. It might mean refusing to let every raise vanish in a lifestyle inflation. It might mean facing debt aggressively instead of living around it. It might mean calculating your actual retirement needs instead of hiding inside rough guesses. It might mean admitting that a visible lifestyle is quietly delaying an invisible freedom. And if this is hitting a nerve, that is not a bad sign. Usually that feeling means you are close to a truth that matters. Many people spend years avoiding retirement conversations because the topic feels heavy, distant, or intimidating. But avoidance does not reduce the weight. It only delays the moment when the numbers become impossible to ignore. Looking directly at the problem is uncomfortable, but it is also the point where power begins to return. Because retirement security is not only about old age. It is about how much pressure your future self will have to carry. It is about whether work becomes a choice or a necessity. It is about whether one health issue, one layoff, one family demand, or one market downturn turns into panic. It is about whether your later years are defined by options or by constraints. When you understand that, retirement planning stops feeling abstract. It starts feeling personal. And maybe the most important mindset shift of all is this: retirement is not an event you arrive at. It is a financial identity you build. Every month, you either reinforce that identity or weaken it. Every decision about spending, debt, investing, lifestyle, and delay is quietly shaping it. That is why small changes now matter so much. Not because they look dramatic today, but because repeated over time, they become a completely different future. So protect your retirement before it becomes urgent. Protect it while you still have time to let consistency do the heavy lifting. Protect it before high costs, low flexibility, and emotional inertia make every correction harder. The people who reach retirement with peace are not always the people who earn the most. They're often the ones who stopped underestimating how expensive delay could become. If this helped you think more clearly about your future, subscribe, keep learning about money and retirement with the channel, and share this video with someone who is doing fine on the surface, but maybe making decisions that quietly put their later years at risk. These are the kinds of conversations that can change a financial life long before the crisis arrives. And if you want the next step after this, watch the related video on lifestyle inflation and silent wealth destruction, because it connects directly to today's topic and shows how rising income can still leave people unprepared for retirement when the wrong habits stay in control.